Now, who's waiting in the wings for us tonight? Bryan Smyth, of all people?
Bryan Smyth's coming on.
Yes. What's he coming on to talk about? Is he coming on to rub in the hard truth to me?
Bryan is coming on. Bryan is from the Hard Truth Distillery in Indiana. Bryan, welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
It's our pleasure. It really is. The Hard Truth Distillery popped up to me, and I saw a news story where it was about Indiana getting legislation passed to say that Indiana rye whiskey has to meet certain criteria. So basically the same as Scotland or Ireland has to meet those criteria. And I thought, with all the new distilleries in America, we're starting to see this regionality. People starting to go, possibly Texas and, the Kentucky and New York. There's going to be New York stuff and so on. And yours was the one that popped up. So tell us about that.
Sure. So, rye whiskey production in the state of Indiana, if you're aware of the different rye whiskeys that have been available on the shelf here, whether they be craft or large brands, really a great majority of that whiskey in the last 10 years is actually produced in Indiana. And I always like to refer to them as this little distillery down the road from us. MGP is in an old Seagram's distillery plant in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and they've been making standing rye whiskey for the last 10 years. And most of the brands, if you're on looking on a shelf in America and you're looking at straight rye whiskeys and you spin that bottle around to see where it's produced, a lot of them will say Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So there's a really great tradition of some quality craftsmanship of rye whiskey in Indiana. And now with the Indiana Artisan Distillery permit that came up about 7 years ago, some of the producers in Indiana are kind of carrying that tradition forward, and Hard Truth being one of them. And the rye whiskey that we're producing right now is really, really outstanding. So, to use the same power that Kentucky did to find a designation for Kentucky bourbon and Tennessee for Tennessee whiskey, we wanted to protect and celebrate and be able to market Indiana rye whiskey to the world.
Excellent. I think that there is an important aspect there that it has these new craft distilleries. And I mean, there's literally thousands of new distilleries popping up in the US. And there is going to be that regionality, and it's nice to see that you guys are leading from the front and getting that protection.
Who decides that protection, Bryan? Is it collectively the industry, or is it the government?
Well, we introduced the idea. So we looked at the powerful tool of not only protecting it for our state, but also getting our state behind. Maybe with some dollars behind, helping us to promote and helping all the distilleries in Indiana to promote. But really, we've went to our state representative in our region of Indiana, and we told him what we were interested in, and it was really key for us to make sure that this act was not controversial in any way. So the act is pretty broad, and what we wanted to do is we didn't want to exclude any of our partner Indiana distilleries that are producing rye. We wanted to kind of get everybody under this envelope and not make it specific to us. So we went to our state representative. He loved the idea. We helped him write up the act, and he put it through, and it passed. So really, the state of Indiana is the one that determines it. So then what that sets is that now moving forward, if you're in Montana and you're making rye whiskey, and let's say 10 years down the road, Indiana rye whiskey is a very marketable, valuable thing. Mm-hmm. You can't put Indiana rye whiskey on a label unless it actually meets the designation that we've set forth.
Yeah, excellent. Now, your own distillery. What's the setup? Tell us about the Hard Truth. Where did the name come from for a start? It's a bit.
Well,
it's a bit like something Justin would come out with, to be honest.
yeah, it is. So there's about 3 different stories about how the name came to light, but I'll tell you the true one. One of my partners was actually driving around down in Florida, and there was a billboard, and it had a American football star on it who had I don't know, he was selling. Now he's in a law firm or selling insurance or something. And
was he driving in this yoke here? Was he driving in this little sort of gator car here? Was he? Is that road legal?
Yeah. No, he was driving around. I think he was selling. But anyways, the billboard said, "And that's the hard truth." And that was right when we had started bought our first stills. And he called the partners, and that's how the name got set.
And what sort of stills do you have?
Sure. So we're in Nashville, Indiana, about an hour south of Indianapolis and an hour north of Louisville. So Louisville, Kentucky. So we're actually very, very close to the epicenter of everything bourbon in the United States. And it's a beautiful little spot in Indiana. We've got 360 acres, so a lot of land, all deep hardwood forest. We carved out about 9 acres of it and put about a 30,000 square foot distillery. We have a Vendome copper and brass works continuous column bourbon system. So it's a continuous column with a doubler. We also have a nice pot still with ability to make gin, rum, and then a vodka column as well. On the property, we have a tour center. We're very tour centric. We get a lot of visitors in our town. I think there's about 3.5 million visitors that come through our little town of 900 permanent residents a year. And so we have a great tour program. And then we also have a 260-seat restaurant with an outdoor eating pavilion that holds another 300 to 400, a music amphitheater. We got a little bit of everything there. If you come visit us and you don't have fun, it's your own fault.
Well, I mean, that must have been. There's only 900 residents. It must have been just a huge boom in the whole town.
Yeah, it's been a great evolution these last few years, and we're laying down about 2,000 barrels of whiskey now a year, split pretty evenly between bourbon and rye whiskey. Our rye whiskey we found is maturing a little bit faster, so as we move to get some cash flowing, we're making a lot of rye. It's delicious. I'm really excited about it.
Good. Now you do. I'm going to have to bring this up because you've got an Irish whiskey for sale. Tell us about McCabe's Irish whiskey.
Yeah, sure. So one of the same partner that I was talking about that was driving around down in Florida, Jeff McCabe, is he comes from proud Irish heritage. And sometime I'm after we're done this evening, I'm going to tell him about this. I think he'd be great for you guys to have on. So Jeff McCabe, our Irish whiskey is named after him, and it's a 3-year-old Irish whiskey. It's really nice. I had about probably 8 to 10 different Irish whiskeys that I had available to choose from, and this one really stood out. It's so I'm not good at talking about the flavor characteristics of whiskey. I heard you earlier on your show. I've heard people refer to spanked leather as a tasting note. I'm not sure what that means, but I heard you mention something about leather.
Yeah.
For me, for me, this whiskey is it's got a really nice. For me specifically, it's got a nice toasted grain characteristic. A little bit of cocoa in there. I really like this whiskey. Good. So we're pretty proud of it, and Jeff loves to sell it because it's got his name on it.
It sounds to me like a whiskey, forged in the Old West, like McCabe and Mrs. King, something like that. It's a great name.
I like it.
It's a great name. It is a great. I'm going to say, get off your horse and drink your milk.
I like that. I think you need a marketing job.
Yeah, I do need a marketing job. Yeah, I need a rather expensive Cadillac and $100,000 a year. Yeah,
And he doesn't work in the mornings. This
I don't
is
do.
some doesn't do it in the morning. So if something in the late afternoon for a couple of hours, part time, with about $100,000 a year, would sit Justin down, no problem.
And I have to have time off to watch Jeopardy every day.
You can now understand why
Sounds
Justin's
good.
unemployed.
You got the gig.
Now, the McCabe, I read that McCabe's are the County Cavan, which is our part of the world. Yeah, it's up with us, up Ulster country. So you told me that you're going to develop the Irish connections. You're obviously, you can't divulge too much about it, but you're wanting to strengthen those and make it more of a feature in your product range and stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the part of this project. The fact that it's difficult for me as a distiller to really choose liquid that's been produced by someone else, and for our brand, in order for us to tell our story, it's important for me to connect with the distillers that actually produce the product, and then the potential of collaboration. So we do a lot of experimentation at our distillery, a lot of barrel finishes. I know that's a pretty widespread activity now in the whiskey world, and we've come up with some really interesting techniques involving special chars and toasts, and then actually smoking the inside of barrels prior to resting aged whiskey in. We've got all kinds of different fun stuff we're doing. So what I'd love to do is the next step is Jeff and I are going to try to get over to Ireland and connect with the distillery and really go deeper and do some projects that connect Hard Truth Distilling Company and a distillery in Ireland. So if you have any distillers on your that are watching your show that are interested in getting in contact with us, you can go to hardtruthdistilling.com and go into the contact me and send a message to Bryan Smyth.
Well, put it like this: we know a guy who's getting his distillery built, and I'm sure if you could work out some way of getting him possibly some reasonably priced casks, he'd be more than happy. Not right, James. He's an award-winning distiller, blender of whiskey. So
nice.
A great guy. He's in the process of building a big distillery down in Donegal. So that's another Ulster distillery too. But what's your own background? How did you get into the distilling world, and how did you end up doing this?
It's funny. I get asked that question a lot, and I think that it seems like the answer to that question from most distillers is pretty varied. I don't come from the from a chemical engineering background, so I kind of came to the industry from the other direction, from more of a flavor creation. I grew up with a really incredibly talented grandmother who was an amazing cook, and I've got an aunt who's actually Japanese, and she's a very good cook, and so they both spent a lot of time with me in the kitchen. I love to create good flavors, and so that's something that's always been something I've enjoyed doing. My dad and his friends made wine twice a year. Made homemade sausages. A bunch of guys getting together and making tasty things. So that's something that I grew up doing. Again, I never saw an opportunity to.
You look the same here in high school as you do now in that photograph. You look exactly the same. You haven't changed in 20 years.
No.
It's the whiskey, you see, Justin. It's the whiskey. Whiskey keeps you immortal. I always tell you that.
That's right.
Whiskey's an elixir.
That's it. So long story short, I've always had a very deep passion for creating flavors. And then this opportunity presented itself. I used to brew beer in college a lot, and so fermentation and even some benchtop distillation was something I was pretty experienced with. So I had an opportunity, and I'll tell you what, for the last 6 years, I've buried myself in the craft and it's just been an amazing ride. You know, we've got this huge distillery. We've got 17 bottled products on the shelf right now. We're in 7 states, and we're getting ready to add about 20 states in the next 6 months. So it's been pretty incredible.
I'm sure just the logistics of the 20 states is, I mean, but they've all got all these different rules, so it must be just an absolute madness, you know. Now, you said about your range. Now, your range, I'm going to run through just some of your range because it is a bit different. We'll just say it's a little bit different. You have I might mispronounce this because I think over the past while my brain has stopped working just the same. But Schoonover straight bourbon. You have Sips straight bourbon. Is that the way it's pronounced? You have rums. You have white oak rum, toasted coconut. Quite like the sound of that. Toasted coconut cream. You have vodka, cinnamon vodka. And this is the one. Whenever I mentioned this earlier on, Justin's face just went ding. He was all happy about this. Peanut butter whiskey. What on earth is peanut butter whiskey?
Well, so I knew you were going to ask me about this. So there is a spirit that's sold here in the United States that's doing very, very well. That is a peanut butter whiskey, and so my partners came to me, and you know, I'm primarily responsible for the creation of all of our spirits in the project. So they came to me and they really wanted me to create a peanut butter whiskey. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I really did not want to create a peanut butter whiskey. But you know, as my wife says, I came home grumbling about it. She said, "Well, if the biggest complaint of your job is being asked to make a kind of whiskey you don't want to make, then you probably should just be quiet." You know, so I got into the lab, and my goal was, as in any spirit that I make, you know, that has any kind of flavor element to it, is I want to make the best version of it possible. I want to use real ingredients. And I want to get a deep, authentic, natural flavor. So with our peanut butter whiskey, you know, when you open up that can of fresh peanut butter or fresh roasted peanuts, you know, that aroma is what off the whiskey. I also added a little sea salt, so you get a little bit of saline on it. It's you know, it's funny when we go out to sell it. You know, most people shake their heads or smile or say there's no way they're interested in it. And almost everybody brings it and sells it at their place. So it's been a fun one.
Justin, I think you would like that.
I think I maybe would like that, actually, because it's a wee bit different. It's like a pre-made cocktail, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
I like the toasted coconut rum. I quite famously don't have a very sweet tooth. I'm not a sweet person particularly, but I do like coconut stuff. So toasted coconut rum. What's that? How do you do that? What way do you make it?
Yeah. So sure. So this was born out of. We actually have a group of restaurants. And you know, our bar manager really wasn't pleased with the coconut rum that they had available behind the bar, and so asked me to work on something new. You know, whenever it's kind of the same philosophy with the peanut butter whiskey. I wanted to really create something that was really rich and flavorful but natural tasting. With this toasted coconut, we actually get in organic coconut chips, and we roast them in an oven until they're really, really dark brown.
Okay.
When you do that, the oils get lifted from the coconut, they get caramelized, and then we take molasses, 50% molasses, 50% raw sugar. We ferment and just double pot distill that to make our rum. So then we have that rum, we proof it down some, and then I rest those toasted coconut chips in that rum for 2 or 3 days. So what that does is that oil from those coconut chips go into the rum. It adds some viscosity, some nice mouthfeel to the rum. But more importantly, you don't get that suntan lotion coconut.
Okay, yeah, I know exactly what you
flavor.
mean.
It's more of a it's more of a deep, rich, rounded. And then again, with just like with the peanut butter whiskey, my grandma taught me whenever you cook anything sweet, you always have to balance it out with a little bit of salt. So there's a little sea salt in this as well. It's pretty amazing when people try it. We were just down in Florida selling, and in Florida there's a lot of coconut rums. And the response down there has been really, really great. So we're who knew that some of the best rum in America was made in Indiana, right?
The Hoosier State.
Yeah.
I like and I like trying anything. I genuinely, because I know people do these products and they make these different flavors. Yep.
Yes, that's Chris May and he was our state representative that we were talking about that really pushed through that bill to get it passed.
Yeah, cool. Now, all the different stuff you're doing is, I mean, it is amazing. The cinnamon vodka, is that quite fiery? Is it? Is that a throat burner?
It's not. And there's another product in the U.S. that's done really well, cinnamon whiskey, and that's the thing about it is it's a really it's got that cinnamon flavor, but then it really burns on the way down. With the cinnamon whiskey or with our cinnamon vodka, with the vodka base, it's a very neutral base, so you get those bright, natural, botanical cinnamon flavors up front, but then it leaves your palate pretty quickly. So it's nice as an aperitif. It's nice as a cordial. It's great in cocktail. In our bar, one of our most popular selling cocktails is a tall glass of ice, cranberry juice, cinnamon vodka, and a squeeze of lime. We sell a ton of those.
Justin, would you like that?
I do. This exotic range of products really floats my boat, Bryan, because I do like something a wee bit different. The cinnamon is the thing that I like the sound of even more than the peanut butter.
Right. Good. Well, I'll have to send you guys some bottles.
Please do. Now, Justin's our cocktail guy, by the way. I'm not really a cocktail. I'm a bit more of a purist. But Justin likes something with a wee sparkly umbrella, and a wee, like an olive or a cherry or something on it. That's his day made. Now, Justin's showing up the lineup of all the different spirits. I will just say, by the way, that James Doherty, who's the guy behind the Dark Silky, says I'm game for having a chat about doing something in the future with an Irish distiller with your good self. So trust me, you won't be disappointed with James.
Excellent.
So we can. I feel a bit like that blind date. Where you sort of where you get like these relationships built up. It's quite good. Now, what's your favorite out of your lineup? Out of everything that if you had to pick out of your lineup, what's the one you reach for, and why?
So with the products that we currently have on the shelf right now, my favorite is the Sipes Straight Bourbon Whiskey finished in a smoked barrel. That was the project that I talked to you about earlier. So our barrel manufacturer and I, worked together on this new project with using smoked barrels. So as opposed to like a peated whiskey or a whiskey where the grains have been smoked in any kind of way, using a smoked barrel is a lot more delicate of an impact on the whiskey. And then when you've got the heavy toast and light char, you're also going to get some more barrel sugars that get to the whiskey along with the smoke. So right now, this guy right here, Sipes Straight Bourbon Whiskey finished in a smoked barrel, is my favorite sipper. It's really complex, a great bourbon, and again at the end, it's almost like the smoke is. I describe it more like a campfire smolder than a real smoky peat. It's delicious.
I think you and James are going to get on very well together because James is a big peat fan. James likes his smoky. That's why this is winning awards, because it's an Irish whiskey with a little bit of peat on it. and it's got that little bit of peat in it to give it a nice little bit of complexity without dominating. It's not a peat. It's a peated whiskey, but just a little bit, and it just gives that nice little bit of complexity. You and him will go on okay, so you will. Now,
I like it, complexity and balance. Complexity and balance are my two big tenets that I'm always working toward.
No, well, I agree. For me, when I read tasting notes and stuff, and some of the other stuff, they always leave out mouthfeel. And mouthfeel, to me, is really, really important because it helps the finish so much. If you've got a nice, oily, good-bodied whiskey, the finish is better. And to be honest, the nose is important to me, and the finish is probably more important. The actual taste, the taste to me is not that important. It's important, obviously, because it plays a part in the other two. But the nose and the finish, if I have something with a nice long development finish, that's more important than the initial taste that comes in your mouth, because it's the development that you're really looking for, and that's what you want in a complex whiskey.
I'm with you on that. The mouthfeel is huge, especially with bourbon and rye whiskeys. Yeah.
Now, between rye and pot still whiskey, rye whiskey has that spicy, peppery thing, more so necessarily than pot still. But pot still kind of famously has that spicy little kick. Irish pot still. Rye just takes it to another level, really. So how, without prying too much, what's your mash bill for your rye whiskies?
So the great thing about the size of our distillery is we're large enough to make enough juice to be significant, but small enough to where I still have the ability to make lots of different varieties. So currently I have about 6 rye mash bills. And so our intent as we release our own rye whiskey is to have, an ever evolving series of, individual mash bills and yeast strains that we will release as, one batch expression. But then also having all those different mash bills and yeast strains, I have the ability, it's like ingredients in making a soup or a gumbo, it's, I'm going to have all these different flavor components to be able to blend together. Yeah. So, as opposed to just being one thing, like Jack Daniel's whiskey, we're really going to be built on different expressions. And I will tell you that the rye, most people's perception of what rye whiskey is, if they're not all that familiar with it, it's kind of like anything else. There's such a wide variety of rye whiskey flavors out there. And so to answer your question, I've got 6 mash bills, and it ranges everywhere from 100% rye to, some malted rye. And then also we have, obviously some mash bills that have corn, malted barley and or wheat added as a supplemental grain to the rye. But really, with rye, it's about the craft and traditions that are set forth, which really, a lot of them have been perfected here in Indiana, of, getting the fermentation correct and the distillation correct, because rye is notoriously very difficult to work with. It likes to foam. It likes to create a mess. It sticks to everything. It's kind of a beast, but boy, it's delicious.
I see the excitement on your face. Did you see Justin's face whenever you said the word gumbo? Yeah, he just popped up. His wee head popped up. He was all excited.
Yeah. I've had it. I thought I was in Forrest Gump Part 3 or whatever it's called now. They did 1 and they did 2. I think. I was down by the bow there. On a jet boat. Shooting crocodiles. Poof.
Oh, he's mad.
Hey, you guys worked alligator and crocodile both into one podcast.
Hey, listen, we can work anything into this thing at all. Listen, thank you very much for keeping us up to date with the Hard Truth Distillery, and keep us up to date with everything that's happening.
And
thanks,
James,
you guys.
I'll get James. I'll I'll tag you in an email or something, and the two of you get together, because the fact that you like smoke and stuff, we've made a connection. Justin, I feel like there should be some sort of music playing.
All right. All right. Catch you later, Bryan. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bryan, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Appreciate it.